What is up, everybody? Thank you so much for tuning in to another minor edition of the All Cardinals podcast. My name is Donnie Drew, and not joined by Richie Bradshaw, who's out covering the Arizona State practices as we inch closer to college football season. But regardless, we have a day off from training camp today. It does admittedly so feel a little weird not being at State Farm Stadium today, but we will be there for the red and white scrimmage tomorrow, which will be Saturday, August 5th. But today I'm here to answer a little bit of questions you guys had from me. But before we get into that, a little bit of breaking news before we hopped on here. The Cardinals did sign running back Marlon Mack to a one-year deal. The team did confirm today. Marlon Mack will immediately come in my opinion, as Arizona's RB2 right behind James Conner. A lot of people talked about the depth behind Conner. Wasn't really super impressive with guys like Corey Clement and Keontae Ingram. The Cardinals needed another strong running back, especially if they were going to establish the run like they've talked about all training camp and all offseason. Now, Marlon Mack made a name for himself, with the Indianapolis Colts a few years back, bounced around a little bit in 2022 between the Houston Texans and the Denver Broncos, but he's still, I believe, 27, 28 years old, right around that range, can still be a very, very viable running back two behind James Conner, who I still think is going to be that more workhorse mentality back for the Cardinals in 2023. But nonetheless, in case Conner goes down or he at least needs a little bit of a breather, I think Mack is an immediate upgrade for the Cardinals backfield. And worst comes to worst, Keontae Ingram is kind of looking like the odd man out here. He hasn't practiced all training camp. He's been sidelined, and with the 53-man roster cuts a few weeks away, bringing in a guy like Marlon Mack doesn't exactly bode well for his chances. Now, we'll get to know Marlon Mack a little bit more whenever he gets suited up. I don't expect him to practice tomorrow, but you never know, especially in the midst of training camp. The Cardinals are just 1 week removed from the preseason, their first preseason underneath Jonathan Gannon and new offensive coordinator Drew Petzing. So maybe they want to get him as much practice time as possible before they welcome the Denver Broncos next Friday. Now, I want to thank you guys for the questions you submitted to us and the mailbag that we posted yesterday. We did get 3 really good questions, so I do want to dive a little bit into those. The first question: will we have a decent season to start looking forward to 2024, or will our season go horribly bad? I think this is a really good question. I think when you want to evaluate the Arizona Cardinals and what success might look like in 2023, I don't think you need to go by wins and losses. I really, really don't think, especially with Kyler returning from an injury. Nobody really knows the timetable for that. With the first-year head coach and Jonathan Gannon, with the first-time offensive coordinator, first defensive coordinator, he's 29 years old. He's the youngest DC or coordinator in general in the league. First-time general manager, Monty Austin Ford. There's a lot of growth that will need to take place. While 2024 does look extremely well for the Cardinals, just in terms of salary cap, draft capital, etc., there's going to be some growing pains, and I think 2023 will indeed be those growing pains. You look at the start of the regular season, they're on the road against Washington for week 1. They bounce back for a 2-game homestand against the Giants and Cowboys. They also have the 49ers, Bengals, Rams, Seahawks, and Ravens to begin, I believe, the first 7 weeks of the season. It's hard to imagine the Cardinals winning more than 2 games, if any, during that stretch. Obviously, after that, it gets a little bit better with the Browns, Falcons, Texans, and then the Rams coming to State Farm Stadium to round out the month of November. I think if there's any stretch of 3 or 4 games, Cardinals fans should realistically expect wins, regardless of the status of quarterback Kyler Murray. It'll probably come in that. But when we talk about a decent season, I think you want to look at how the team is and how the players are from week 1 to week 17, week 18. If you see notable improvement, if you see changes, if you see progress from the guys under Jonathan Gannon from week 1 to the end of the season, I think you chalk that up as a win, regardless of how the year goes in the win or loss column. If you're asking me if it's going to go horribly bad, I'm not so sure. There's a little part of me, and I don't know if this is Gannon just sweet talking us in the media, but there's a little part of me that believes that the Cardinals somehow, some way might push themselves to like a 6 or 7 win season and out of the top 5. But you look at the roster, especially with how the quarterbacks have played in training camp, it's hard to buy them being an average football team at very, very best. I think both themselves and the Houston Texans will very much be competing for the number 1 pick, even though if you're a Cardinals fan, you're rooting for both to do horrible in 2023, because obviously the 2 first-round picks will come into play in 2024. But decent season, Record-wise, wins and losses, I don't think so. I do think Jonathan Gannon does know how to coach a football team, and I do think fans will at least get to enjoy that aspect of it. Moving on, we do have 2 questions, both pertaining to different receivers. The first one, is Michael Wilson a starter? The Michael Wilson hype train has gone off the rails, I guess, so to say. Since he was drafted, I mean, he didn't have a great senior season, went to the Senior Bowl, made everybody's eyes just pop down there in Mobile, which is a very good time if none of you have been out there. Highly suggest going to do that. Enter the draft process. He had a lot of concerns about his injury history. Didn't play a whole lot during his career at Stanford. Cardinals got him for what many believe were pennies on the dollar. He's a 6'2" dude, very fast. Obviously, you've seen the picture, very, very strong. He's impressed in individual drills. He's impressed in team drills. He's getting a lot of runs with the first team. Now, granted, that could be because Marquise Brown hasn't been involved in a lot of the team activities, so I'm not really sure what that will look like when Hollywood eventually does work his way back. So far with the first team, it's been mostly Zach Pascal and Michael Wilson on the outside, and then Rondell Moore as your starting slot receiver. I think Michael Wilson, should he stay healthy, if he's not getting a whole lot of snaps to begin the season, I think eventually he's going to work his way into it. He's too good. Right now, he's playing too good. Preseason can change that, and I think we'll get a much better look whenever he's competing against guys that aren't his teammates in a controlled setting. But the early returns of Mike Wilson have been very, very good. I think he can eventually turn to a starter mid-season, late season, but it all depends on his health, which is something a lot of people at Stanford said. Like we already talked about, he got to showcase his abilities down there at the Senior Bowl. So all dependent on if he can stay healthy. And if he does, I do indeed think he'll earn himself a lot of playing time. Speaking of staying healthy, will Marquise Brown do good this year? I think you need to define what good is, right? So last year without DeAndre Hopkins, in the 8 games Hollywood played without D-Hop, I believe he had 50 catches for 553 yards. And if you double that to a full season, 100 catch, 1,000-yard season, it doesn't sound bad on paper, but if you're a bona fide number 1 receiver in the final year of your contract, that's the bare minimum of numbers you need to put up to kind of put yourself in the market of what you want to be paid in. Will Hollywood receive a big paycheck, whether that's from Arizona or somewhere else? Probably not. And going back to the health thing, the foot injury last year really derailed him. And there's been a lot of whispers at Cardinals training camp that the ankle might be bothering him too. So something just to keep an eye out for. The Cardinals have had 2 padded practices so far. He has partaken in both. There were points where Marquise would start stretching with the team and do some individual work. He would help the quarterbacks throw sideline passes. He'd act as kind of like a receiving dummy for them. But he wouldn't do 7-on-7, and he wouldn't do team. And it's kind of been the theme, right? And we asked him about it in the locker room. You guys can check out the video that we posted on the All Cardinals YouTube channel. But we asked him what he was dealing with. He really didn't want to admit it. He said that he's kind of getting close to working himself back to being fully available in practice. But Marquise Brown, number 1, needs to stay healthy, and he's just not doing that. Number 2, he's going to have all the opportunity in the world, regardless of who's playing quarterback for the Cardinals. Obviously, we all know the connection between him and Kyler Murray dating back to the days at Oklahoma. I think whether it's Kyler, Colt, Clayton Tune, David Blau, Jeff Driscoll, whoever it might be throwing him the football, he will have all the opportunity in the world to impress. And to be honest, whenever Marquise Brown is healthy, he has put up some pretty decent numbers. So will he do good this year? I think that kind of depends on your definition of good. I think he'll be fine. I don't think he's going to be great. I don't think he's going to be bad, but something just deep down worries me about his ability to stay healthy. Hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully he proves me wrong too. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in to another edition of the All Cardinals podcast. My name is Donnie Druin. Follow me on Twitter at Donnie Druin. Follow the website work at allcardinals.com or si.com/NFL/Cardinals. We are slowly creeping up on 1,000 subscribers. We're going to do a big giveaway whenever we hit that mark. We'll see you guys at the red and white practice tomorrow. Take care.